Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to Wednesday night. I was supposed to have a baby, and tonight we are going to be talking about really how to manage the expectations, how to manage the life of living in a way that you thought you may never have been, that you had all these thoughts and these dreams and these hopes, and things just didn't turn out that way. And I have the most amazing guest for you. She's my friend, but she's also someone who I'm incredibly just humbled and grateful to have as part of my sphere and my life, and someone who I think really adds a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom to this space, who's gone through her own journey and really understands what all of you are going through. And so I'm waiting for Aliza to come. She should be here in a few seconds. Here she is. I just saw that she came on. And I can't wait for all of you to meet her, and for feel free to ask questions, to be involved, to get thoughts from her. Really, oh, and she's here.
Hi.
She's really an incredible, just open book, and shares so much of herself. And she's, like, as I said, she's just the perfect person to come and talk about this. So, Aliza, hello.
Hi. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank God. Thank God.
Good.
I you need no introduction, but I'm still going to let you introduce yourself. I gave you a little bit already.
Thank
Just
you.
tell everyone who you are. And look, you know what I've been discussing on this page for the last few days. And I please just we're all here to sort of just listen to your wisdom and your thoughts.
Totally. Thank you. First of all, I'm just going to say hi to everybody that's listening because this is my first time doing an Instagram live and it's so cool.
Yay.
So thank you, Amy, for inviting me. Um, so a little bit about my story and who I am and why I also am passionate about talking about things related to family planning or not being able to plan a family. So just a little bit of background. We Before I got married, actually, I had found out that I had kidney disease in my mid 20s. And when I was being diagnosed and when I was, being seeing doctors and stuff like that, I was just told, like, listen, maybe one day when you're in your 40s, maybe you'll need a kidney transplant, maybe you won't. Um, and I just didn't take it super seriously because I didn't feel sick. There was something wrong, but I didn't feel sick or different or anything like that. And so I just like went about my life. I even went on a date the same day that I had a kidney biopsy, which is like
Oh my gosh.
actually, I know in hindsight is probably kind of dumb. I also feel bad for him, but he's a nice guy. He's married now too, so it's fine. But
Okay.
I I didn't let anything stop me. And they said maybe when you have a kid one day, you might need to be a high risk pregnancy kind of a situation. And I was like, that's okay. Like I've heard of other people having high risk pregnancies. They're fine. They have kids. And from there, I just would check in with my doctors from time to time. And my numbers, just so everyone knows, the way you monitor kidney functioning is through creatinine levels. And so I would have my creatinine checked every 6 months or so, 6 months every year. And it just seemed like sort of status quo, not better, but not necessarily worse. Um, and from there, um, as I was, oh, hey, Dina, I see my sister just joined, sorry. Um, um, so basically, I was dating. I finally meet my husband when I'm 31. I had two younger sisters get married before me, and I was happy for them, but obviously a little bit sad for myself. They both proceeded to have children before I did, and again, love those kids. Um, and when we got married in January, and my husband and I were both in like university-based jobs, and neither of us could leave our job. And the plan was that my husband was going to move to New York. He was in Baltimore. So we decided we wouldn't start a family like right away because we thought it would be crazy to like not be in the same city and for me to like be, I don't know, pregnant, throwing up by myself. Like that sounded really depressing.
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And and so, like I said, we got married in January, and Erev Pesach in April, I will never forget, I woke up and I had a terrible pain in my right foot. And it was like, I don't know what this is, but who has time for this on the morning of Pesach? Like, I need to go burn the chametz, and we're hosting people. We were on my husband's college campus,
Oh my gosh.
and I was like, I can't do this. And I just ignored it. And I never will forget that when we were doing the maybe like 12-minute walk home from the campus to our apartment, I had to stop like 3 times to catch my breath because I was in so much pain walking. And of course, I didn't go to the hospital on the holiday because I was
No,
like,
of course not.
why would I do that?
Right. Of course
Um,
not.
and then, but 2 days later, I literally couldn't walk. Like I was in so much pain. So then I went to the ER, and they misdiagnosed me, and they like gave me a boot and crutches. And they're like, oh, maybe you hurt yourself. So I went back to New York the next day, and I went to my doctor. He like took one look at me, and he's like, you have a blood clot. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I didn't even know what a blood clot was, really. I thought that they were all fatal. Like I had no idea what was going on. I went to another hospital, and then they were like, yeah, you have a blood clot. And that was like the first like real thing that was not great to happen. And I was like, okay, let's just like deal with this. I think I took some anticoagulants, some blood thinners, and I
Right.
was better afterwards.
And
And
nobody said anything about like where the blood clot was coming from, why it was like nobody dug any deeper. It was just like, you have this random blood clot.
totally. And what was so crazy was, and I'll fast forward the story, is exactly a year later, I had traveled again. So what I realized, what they said was like, listen, blood clots can happen when you fly. And I was like, okay. So I happened to have gone to Israel. It was a long flight, and I got a blood clot. And like, thank God it went away. Exactly a year later, I went to Israel again. And I remembered like walking and being like, I have a blood clot. Like, I know this feeling. I have
Wow.
another blood clot. And we went back to the hospital, and they're like, you have another blood clot in your left leg now. And I said, I know. And they said, are you on birth control? And I said, yeah. And they were like, well, that's an impetus for getting blood clots. And I was like, I've been on birth control now for a really long time. Why hasn't anyone told me this?
Right.
And it was because like at that point, we were a little bit worried about my health already now, because I had this blood clot, and we were talking about starting a family, but my doctors were like, well, you have kidney disease, and you don't really, it's not like the safest thing for you to go ahead and have a baby right now. And I was like, no, that's like unacceptable to me. I need to have a baby. I want to have a baby.
Right.
And I went to like one doctor to another, and I was like, I went to the head of high risk, I guess obstetrics, if you're the
Yeah.
doctor, at Columbia Hospital. And the doctor, like, she literally like laughed in my face and was like, you can't have a baby. You're sick. You can't, you're just not well enough. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
you don't know me. You don't know what it's like to be an Orthodox Jew. You don't know what it's like to be a woman who got married at 31 and then also couldn't have a baby because her husband lived in another city. Like, no, that's not acceptable.
Right.
And I then went to another high risk OB who was from, and I was like, oh, well, he'll help me because he's from and he gets it. And he
Right.
was like, I will help you, but you need to see another nephrologist, another kidney doctor who I work with. So I went to that nephrologist, and he was a lovely guy, also from, and like also like got what was going on. And I was like, just tell me what medication I need to take. Just tell me what I need to do. I want to have a baby. And he was like, okay, let's like work on keeping your kidneys like intact and like not changing. So he put me on steroids. And if anybody here has ever been on steroids, I know it's like the worst experience. To make it even worse, like I had every adverse side effect. I gained 40 pounds in 3 weeks. I like
Oh my gosh.
literally just expanded. It was
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
It was crazy. Like somebody texted me and was like, I heard you look like you got stung by a million bees. And I was like, I mean, I guess that's one way to put it. It was
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
It was crazy. And I ended up in the ER a bunch of times because I was in so much pain. It was terrible. So they obviously, thank God, took me off of that. And thank God my nephrologist was actually like a really humble person. And he was like, I just think that like you're out of my league. Like I think you need to go to a even more important specialist or whatever it was. And he said when
Right.
he was a student, however many years ago that was, he had remembered meeting a doctor who's at Cornell, Dr. Phyllis August. He's like, she specializes in women in their childbearing years. I think you should go and see her.
Right.
And I called her office, and this like little old lady answered the phone. And when she heard me say my name was Aliza, she like bageled me and was like, oh, Baruch Hashem, you're calling, And I was like, thank you. And and she actually got me an appointment. She's like, the doctor's booked, but I'll get you in. And And from there, I'm going to continue with my story,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
okay. And from there, Dr. August, and I share her name because, like, if there's anybody out here listening who needs like an amazing nephrologist, like, get in touch with her. She's an awesome person, and doctor. And she said to me, like, you know, one or two appointments in, she's like, listen, you have kidney disease, and it's not going to go away. And you have two options here. You can wait until you have a kidney transplant, whenever that will be. And so many times we clear women a year after their transplant to carry a baby. But you don't know when that transplant's going to be. And the other option that you should consider is surrogacy. And when she said surrogacy, I was like, here we go again. Somebody like not knowing what it's like to be a frum woman who wants to carry a baby. And I was so angry. I was like, how could you even suggest that? Like, I don't want to I don't want to use a surrogate. I don't even know what that is. I didn't know anybody who had gone through surrogacy.
Right.
And it was really a really painful time. I remember being in her office, which was like tiny and like 9 million degrees. And I was with my mom and my husband. And I just was like beside myself, like so many tears and so much anger, and just being like, are you kidding me? Like, this wasn't enough. Like, I needed to have kidney disease. I needed to get married old. I needed to da da da. And now I can't have my own baby. Like, what? So we went home and we thought about it over a long time. We spoke to our rabbis. Um, and we came to the realization that at a certain point, we didn't know when my transplant was going to be. We didn't know if I would be 45, you know, or however old, and then I would start having a family. So we decided at that point that we were going to go via the route of surrogacy. And I'm happy to explain more about that in a little bit, but just
Yep.
so, you know, just so people know right now, so surrogacy is when you, if you're able to, there are women who can't even use their own eggs, but we were able to create embryos with my eggs and my husband's sperm, and we froze our embryos, and we used a surrogate who we transferred the embryos into, and she carried our baby. So I just like fast forwarded
Yeah.
through their story. But what was pretty crazy was that when we were going through the IVF process, um, my kidneys like totally reacted to it, and my creatinine skyrocketed. And when I went from maybe having a transplant in my 40s, we did the IVF in March, and then I had to do the second round in May. And at my May, you know, during that May cycle, I remember it was Sunday. It was the Salute to Israel parade, one of my like favorite days of the year. And we were at the parade, and my doctor's office called. And for those out there, no, it's not random to have to go in for on Sundays for, you know, monitoring, or even to come back a second time, maybe in a day, because the doctor wants to just see how you're
Yep.
progressing. And when I was there, my doctor said, you know, you really need to see your nephrologist because um,
This was
the
the IVF doctor was
yes,
calling you saying you need to see your nephrologist. Okay,
yes,
just to clarify. Go ahead.
sorry, yes.
No, 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 you're good.
So you need to see the nephrologist because your numbers aren't looking good. And I was like, okay, what else is new? I'll go see my nephrologist. And I went to see her, and she said, listen, like, you got, this is May. I needed to come back again in July, August for blood work again. She's like, I don't think things are looking great. We got to really monitor you really closely. So I came back in August, and she said, Aliza, I think you're going to need a transplant next summer. Like, we went from like maybe in my 40s to like now I was 33, and they were like, you're going to need a transplant. So what do you think? So I came back again, I think, or maybe it was even in May when she told, that's what it was. In May, she told me it would be the next summer, and I had to come in August for blood work again. And when I came in August, she said, you know what? We have to do this by February, because if you don't get a transplant by February, you're going to be on dialysis by March. And I was just like, what? How does
You know,
this
it's
happen?
like I've heard you tell this story before, and like but even like hearing it again now, like it's the way things happen in this like insanely sped up way of like one thing after another, obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. I mean, like I literally don't even know. Yeah, no.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I still don't get it. Like, it's so crazy how it happened and how so quickly, and like I don't know, like it's still like the craziest blur to me that like that was all happening at the same time. So like there I was preparing to like go through my transplant while we were also selecting a surrogate to work with. And like it was all happening at the same time. And even so much so that we met a surrogate, we matched with her, and we ended up scheduling a transfer for January, an embryo transfer in January.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was going to be a month before my transplant.
Right.
And I actually remember then, like the IVF doctor saying to me, "Are you sure you want to do the transfer a month before your transplant? Like, you could have complications." And I was like, "Nah, I'll be fine." Like they said, like 68
Right.
weeks, you're good, you're back up and running, you'll be
Right.
fine. And I was like,
Right.
I don't, what, again, why was I going to be worried?
Right.
And so we transferred in January, and I actually was I was driving her from the appointment. We were in the car with her when like the transplant office called me and was like, "Hi, we just want to make sure that this date still works for you." And I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh. Oh
"Could
my
you hold
goch.
on a second?" Like,
Oh my
and I like
gosh.
pulled over and I jumped out of the car so I could have like a minute of privacy, even though like that was probably the most intimate relationship outside
Yep.
of my husband.
Yep.
And so we scheduled the transplant, and it was February 22nd, 2018. And on February 23rd,
Hold
2018,
on. You just need to say
yes.
one thing. You need to say who your donor was, who your kidney
Oh,
donor was.
of course, of course. So my mom was actually my donor. And if any of my sisters are listening, please tell mom I don't think she's on the call right now. So tell her to get on Instagram. She'll be really upset if she misses this. Um, so yeah, my mom was my match. It was actually really incredible. She, like, from that first appointment, when they said you're going to need a kidney transplant, she was like, "Can you test me?" And they were like, "Yes, like you're young enough and you're healthy enough, like we can test you."
I like every time I hear, like, I have tears in my eyes now. Like, it just like there's something just so beautiful about it in a thousand ways, in a thousand
it
ways.
it really it still like blows my mind. Like I joke when I'm with my mom, I'm like, "Do we look more alike because I have her kidney now?" um, um, so
Your
um,
sister saying also you didn't want their kidney, so yeah.
yes, no, thank you, Dina. I would have loved the kidney from you. But anyway, so yeah, so what was also really crazy was because of the timeline. Oh, good, my mom's on now. Hi, mom. Because of the timeline, they said I needed to get a backup though, because if my mom wasn't a match, I would need to find another donor. And so, like that day, I sent out an email to like 60 or 70 people who I felt close with, and no one knew this was going on. Like I was so private about everything. And I said, "Listen, this is like really confidential. I need a kidney transplant in 6 months from now. I need a donor. Hopefully it's going to be my mom, but if not, like, can you consider being tested?" And right away, I mean, everybody wrote back incredibly supportive things,
Wow.
and 10 people got tested, and five
Wow.
of them passed like the first round of testing to
Wow.
match. And
Wow.
like I remember going for an appointment, and like the secretary, whomever was there, was like, "You know, we've never seen this many people come and get tested for one person." And I was like, "I just know a lot of people, like really good people. I don't know, it was
You too.
incredible."
You too. Okay. So Aliza, like, look, I mean, I don't want to give, like, tell us just the end, and then I want to go back and sort of dissect pieces of it so that you can impart more chizuk and wisdom and pieces to all of the different pieces that you went through. So tell us how it all ended, or I mean, where you are now.
So February 22nd, 2018, I have my kidney transplant. February 23rd, 2018, our surrogate called, and actually the doctor called and said she had miscarried. And it was like, what? Like I'm sitting in a hospital room by myself. Like I don't remember. My mom was recuperating on a different floor. My husband was like probably trying to, I don't know what, get me food or something like that. I don't even know. And I was just like, okay, like what am I supposed to say? And I remember the surrogate called me and she said, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "I don't think it's your fault. I really hope it's not your fault."
Right.
And I just said, "We're going to do it again. We're just going to try again." And she thanked me. And then I was like, "I hope this is a good idea." Like so many things are going through your mind. And I'm like, she's thanking me for trusting her. I was already trusting her,
Right.
like, I don't know. This is like,
Right.
nobody should have to go through surrogacy, but if you do go through surrogacy, it is like the biggest trust test of your entire life. I think, honestly, I think more than marriage, because like you're an adult who's making a hopefully consensual decision there. And this is like trusting a total stranger with the well-being and safety of your unborn child, and who you're not like living next door to necessarily.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 1,000 ways. That's our next live. Our next live is talking about the intricacies and all of the different pieces about surrogacy. That's our next live. But
Definitely.
now, okay, so fast forward, and so she agreed, and you decided, and you transferred again.
So we transferred again in June, the night before my high school. No, sorry, the day of a graduation that I was running for the high school that I was working at, because that's what we do.
Right.
And I went from that graduation, davened really hard. And thank God, our son was born on February 22nd, 2019, exactly a year after my transplant. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really
Again,
crazy.
chills, like total chills. Yeah.
I know we couldn't have planned that any better. I haven't seen my husband's birthday is February 21st, so we were like, oh well, either way, like it'll be a great day. But I was happy he was on my anniversary of my transplant, so that was really special.
Of course. Okay, look, often, like, I'm talking a lot now about, on the page, we're talking about this, like, having this positive outlook. And it's very easy for people like you and I, right? Like, we've been through an incredible amount in our lives, incredible amount of struggle, and we got that happy ending. So we can look back and we can reflect upon it. But I think that what you have is a particular vantage point of being an older single, not getting married at the time that you expected to get married, along with everyone else in your family, everyone else in your community, and then finally getting married, and then still not being able to sort of like catch up to everyone else, whatever that means, right? So could you speak to a little bit of that, like your mindset then, your words of thoughts and chizuk for this community, who people who are struggling with this kind of thing exactly, like how did you do it and still maintain some semblance of sanity?
So, well, first and foremost, I always say this, like I really do think I was blessed with a positive disposition. Like God knew what he was going to throw my way. And, the name Aliza means happiness. And I think like my parents had Ruach HaKodesh when they chose my name, and they just, thank God. I'm not trying to make anybody feel better. Like I just have always been able to like focus on the positive. It doesn't mean I haven't screamed and been angry and cried, but I've always stayed trying to remained focused on the positive and like, you know, thinking to myself, I know this is going to be hard, but I'm going to get married one day, or I know this is going to be hard, but I'm going to have my baby. Like it's going to happen. And even that, you said you're at the point where you can like look back and say like you got what you wanted. But have I? Meaning I have my one child. I always thought I would have many children, and I have one, and I'm blessed. And he is mamish the greatest baby in the entire world.
And he's delicious.
He is.
Yes.
Thank you. But I want to have more children, and surrogacy is incredibly expensive. And my doctors have not cleared me to carry my own child. I will never be able to because they just think it's too risky for me. My doctor, the IVF doctor had said, are you sure you want to do this transfer, a month before you're having your transplant? And I was like, totally okay with it. I ended up being in the hospital 6 times after my transplant. And at one point I was there for 4 weeks. Like I couldn't have imagined how hard it would have been, let alone to have had a baby, 9 months after having a transplant. So, in ways I was like, okay, everything happens when it's supposed to happen and for the right reason. And I really do believe in that. I mean, I'm not saying any of this is easy, but I do feel like we have to be in a certain place at a certain time for things to line up and to work out. Even like the way I met my husband, like nobody would have set us up. We were very different hashkafically. And a friend introduced us, and I thought he was married and he thought I was Haredi. So like we didn't go out. And then we re-met, and like then we hit it off because we were like in this natural setting, and it was great and it was fun. And then we got engaged 3 months later, like, and nobody would have set us up, and it was just like I had to have gone on many, many bad dates with like what I thought was the ideal guy to then realize that I was in this place where my husband was the ideal guy. And I think that like what's so important for people to like remember is you are not alone. Like you're not the only person who's not married in this world. You are not the only person struggling to get pregnant. You are not the only person who can't carry because of health reasons. You are maybe not familiar with the community out there that is around you, but there are other people who are going through the same thing as you. And I was talking to a good friend of mine before this, and she had a great line. She said, we're on the same train, but in different cars. She's working on getting pregnant
Great line.
and right. And I was like, oh, that's going to be the next like Instagram post.
I was going to say, I feel like I need to write that down because I feel like I'm going to use that at some point. Yes.
Totally. Same train, different car. And I think that like, that's like really important. So, so now we have like this amazing community of women, really of couples, actually. We're all in a WhatsApp group that we talk, who are at different stages of surrogacy, because until we met each other, everyone thought they were the only frum couple that was going through it.
Wow.
And now there's like 20 of us in this group, and I'm constantly fielding calls. Like, it's unbelievable how many people have reached out to me, and I'm so happy to like share with people, because it was such a lonely experience until we found more people who we could talk to. And I think that this is a forum for people to connect and to meet each other and to find the support that they need. And there are other organizations out there, but I still think that like everyone is still feeling alone, and it's really hard on like a relationship, or if you're single and all you want to do is have a baby, like that is such a lonely place to be in. And I totally get it. I totally get it. And I thought to myself at certain points when I was single, like by a certain age, like if I want to be a single mom by choice, like I want to do that, and friends of mine who have frozen their eggs and things like that, like it's the greatest gift they could have given themselves. And I encourage anyone who can and wants to do that, like do it. You'll feel like you have some ownership in an otherwise like situation where you feel like you have no control.
Totally. Do you, I wanted to actually, like, just because you brought it up, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about and have you share a little bit more of is like, Batsheva Lerner Maslow, who, we both know and we both love, who is a physician who specifically one of her specialties, she's a reproductive endocrinologist. She's been on this page and she's talked about egg freezing and specifically the right times and things like that. And it's on an Instalive and it's saved, and I'll link it afterwards for people to find. But like, she talks about the medical piece of it. She talks about like, the optimal time, the optimal place, the optimal this, the optimal that, like, talk about it from like the, like, researching and talking to the older singles community. Like, what is it from your side? Like, you brought it up a little bit, like, give us a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think, it happened to me even just yesterday. I was trying to set a couple up, and the guy said to me, oh, well, she's over 30. Like, I'm not sure if like I should date her. And I was like, hi, I'm going to educate you really quickly right now. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But he doesn't know. He just doesn't know that women can freeze their eggs. He like just didn't know. And I was like,
right. But also like over 30, like that's not over 40. It's over 30.
Correct. But that's what our community has told the men in our community, that, it's a ticking time bomb. And literally people have said to me, but her clock. And I was like, you know what clock it is? Like you said, it's hers. Like, you don't have to worry about her clock. You worry about yours and she'll worry about hers. And yes, there are, I mean, so many people, and I have been involved in shidduchim for many years. Like, I really, because
matchmaking, just to
matchmaking.
clarify.
Sorry,
yeah,
thank you. And I have had women confide in me and say, like, who are older than 30, who are closer to 40, and said, like, you can tell somebody that I've frozen my eggs, and like I know, like, what they're thinking when they see my age. So I think that people have to do what's right for them. I think that, like, if you are concerned, just make an appointment. Like, just meet with a doctor who can help you and say, yeah, you know what, let's talk about freezing your eggs. Or don't worry, like, you have a few more years to worry about it. You don't have to think about it now. It is a very expensive ordeal. And some people have insurance that will cover it and some people don't. Our insurance didn't cover one penny of our IVF, and we had to do 2 cycles. That was $30,000 in cash. Crazy. And I know that that's hard for women and for couples to spend money on. And I think that people have to just, say to themselves, like, if I'm concerned, what can I do to help myself? And I think that there are definitely people like Dr. Maslow out there who are so wonderful to talk to, and as a resource for women, and set up an appointment with her, or just, even talk to your gynecologist and ask her who or him who you should talk to. But there are people out there who can help. And I think, older singles, don't give up. I know what it's like, and just keep, holding on that you'll meet somebody. And for those people who feel like they won't, I also, I hear you and I see you, and it's really, really hard. And I truly feel your pain, even though I was lucky to get married.
Do you think, I mean, when you were sort of in the thick of it, I mean, what you spoke about a lot was like surrounding yourself with people who like really got it. The people who like that really could make you feel as if you were not alone. Like, yes, like there is this virtual community. Like there are lots of virtual communities nowadays where you can feel that way, but like that's not a substitute. I mean, granted, we're in the middle of a pandemic and like let's just call it what it is, but that's still not a substitute for really sort of feeling part of that community. And can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I lived in Washington Heights before I got married. And even after we got married, we stayed in Washington Heights. And that was probably the greatest thing I could have done for my mental health. I had an incredible group of friends who were single like me. I mean, thank God most of us got married. There are still friends who did not yet get married. But being in a community where the majority of us were single, and we had our Shabbos meals together, and we weren't at tables with other couples who were with couples who were talking about, as everyone says, day school and strollers and this and that and which
Right.
Honda Odyssey to get, like, and I still don't talk about those things, honestly, partially because I have PTSD and partially because my baby's not even two,
Right.
but you know, um, but that's part of, that was really part of my survival was, even not going home for the holidays. My mom knew, like, if I felt that the best place for me to be was with my friends and not with my family, she knew that was important for me, and that was a decision that I had to make. And I think whether it's living in Washington Heights or on the Upper West Side or somewhere else where there is a larger number of singles, I think there are people who think that, like, they like hate on singles communities. They're like, oh, well, people stay there because they're comfortable. No, we stay there because we're comfortable emotionally and mentally, not because we are partying it up. No one's like choosing the single life. They're there because that is where they're at right now. And then in terms of, like I said, I created a community around myself with, of other families going through surrogacy. And I think that you can connect to one person, connect you to other people, and I'm sure, and if there aren't, then I would happily help start it. But there are probably support groups out there for women who are single moms by choice. And people suggest looking on Facebook for those groups. Personally, I didn't go the Facebook route until more recently, for finding groups to help answer questions that I had, because I just felt like that was too random and like weird for me. But some people love the randomness and like the
Yep.
anonymity.
Yep.
But I would put out there that, like, there are like, if you just ask one person, they might have that information. And I'll put myself out there, like, if anybody wants to reach out to me, and like I could help connect you with other people. I know a woman who has 4 children, who lives in New Jersey, who was a single mom by choice, and like her kids are all mainstreamed in the regular, in our day schools, and like they're living a wonderful life, and they have an incredibly special mom. And there are lots of people out there who could be great support for anybody who has a specific concern that they think that they're alone.
I look, I mean, because you've been in so many different spaces, you have, you have, you're the connector. You're a connector for so many different individuals. So I mean, it's incredible. It's really incredible. Someone's saying, was your community or work understanding?
It's a great question. Yes and yes. So when I mentioned I was on steroids, and a number of people were not, that it wasn't that they weren't supportive, but they were like incredibly nosy, and they asked, like, my siblings, they even asked our rabbi, they asked my husband if I was pregnant, which I was like,
Gosh,
none of your business. And
totally,
no. And
totally,
like, I'm
right.
so not pregnant, and it's because of these stupid steroids that I'm not pregnant. So, at the same time, though, we were very private about going through surrogacy, and I can certainly talk about that more. But it definitely felt like the kind of thing that we didn't want talking about until our baby was. But the day he was born and we shared it with the world, it was like the greatest outpouring of love ever. And I joked,
I
Thank you.
remember. Yes.
I worked in a girls' high school until recently, and I especially there didn't want anybody to ask me questions. I just wasn't prepared for these amazing young girls to ask me my questions. And the funny thing was is that Kim Kardashian has had, I think, 3 children through a surrogate already, and like because of her, she actually paved the way. And like my girls were like, "Oh yeah, we know what a surrogate is." I was like, "Thanks, Kim." So
Okay. Well, see, there are some good things that come out of like, crazy, like, reality TV.
totally. But it was actually really interesting because they totally, like this younger generation, totally got it. Like they didn't actually have so many questions. Whereas, like, one of my colleagues who's probably in her 70s was like, when I told her we were expecting through a surrogate, because I had to tell a few people because I was leaving school.
Right.
She was like, "Oh, I thought you looked different." And I was like, "No, not pregnant.
Not
Somebody
me.
else is pregnant for me." Like, it was like, oh my God. And so that was pretty absurd. But I did tell my just like the admin team, I was an assistant principal, so I told the other principals when I was going through the IVF because I was coming to school late and I had to go in for monitoring, and they were incredibly supportive. And thank God. And I think like since we've come out and shared our story, like people really are just like so wonderful about it. And like another concern we had was like, what are people going to say to our
Right.
child? Like, are other kids going to be mean or like say, "Oh, your mommy's not your mommy"? And that was like such a hard thing for me to think about. And like, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Like, you know, like
I,
I think that what we're sharing is really helping many families and not going to hurt ours. And that's really important to me.
1,000%. I mean, look, I mean, so many parents of adopted children, those are the kinds of questions that they go through also. And even there, the answer is like, Javi Brook, who I don't know if you know her, but
Yeah.
I've had her on here twice actually. She's a Chabad shlucha in Montana, and she has infertility and has not been able to have any of her own children. And she has 5 adopted children. And she always says, like, if any of her kids ever threw it back at her, or if at any point, like, someone would say, she'd be like, but I chose you. I chose you. Like, it's all about like, and she's very open about the fact that her children are all adopted. They all know that they're adopted. It's
Mhm.
not, it's not a secret. And it's about the way you present the information to the world, about how it's
Totally.
about trying to give over to other people this education and knowing that there are lots of different ways to create a family. And so
Totally.
amazing.
Totally. Totally.
This one woman is saying she wish she also had a supportive environment at work. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it doesn't always happen that way. It doesn't.
Totally.
But look, one other piece I also wanted to ask you about was just about like how do you know, like, when you were, before you were married and then after you were married and going through all of these medical issues, like what were your thoughts then, and sort of reflecting back now, like what to say to the people around you and your family, your friends, of like, what, like, what's going on in your life, like how come you're not having children even though you're expected to, like, or maybe like when you're single, like, well, are you dating, like how do you answer those kinds of questions? How do you answer it then? How did you answer it then, and sort of now looking back, like, what are your thoughts?
So I'll start with dating because that was, I guess I had even more chutzpah then. I remember, once being in a supermarket, like in the frozen aisle, and like for some reason, I mean, not for some reason, it's always really cold there, and I was like shivering. And I remember this woman like coming up and like putting her arm on me, being like, "So new, what's going on?" And I was like, "Is this really happening? Like in the frozen aisle of the supermarket?" Um, and and I had that like realization right then where I was like, I would never ask you, "Have you fought with your husband recently? Like, how's that going? Like, are you guys happy?" Like, I would never ask you about your marriage. And you have no
Totally.
right to ask me about my single life, which again, I am not choosing, like, so,
Totally.
so I actually had started talking about being single as a single. And I like was very vocal, and I became very involved with like Why You Connects and Soviet Sign and all these places just to like raise sensitivity around the plight of the single, and like reminding people that we were adults in every other aspect of our life, and everybody respected us except for our community, who still referred to us as girls and boys because we weren't married.
Right.
And like, That's not acceptable.
Totally.
And if there are no single people on this, listen up, like all of the married people out there, like treat the people who are single, who are not yet married, as I like to call them, as equals, because they are, and they have the respect in their professional fields. Just because they aren't married, it doesn't mean that they aren't adults, full adults like we are. And I still remember like the day I put on a sheitel, like feeling like I was like
Oh wait,
respected more.
just
Wait,
to explain
sorry.
for a second. If you're Orthodox, generally speaking, often you will cover your hair or cover part of your hair, and so some people choose to do that with a wig or a sheitel. Keep going. Sorry, just to explain.
No, thank you. And I apologize. I feel like I'm having a one-on-one chat with you,
I,
Amy.
you are, but we're just doing it in
Thank
front
you.
of 46 people right now, so it's all
Yes,
good.
thank you. So yeah, so I felt like the second I put on a wig and was viewed as a married woman, all of a sudden I was like respected of my opinion. And it's like no different. Like I have a friend who's a child psychologist and he's not married, he doesn't have children, and people are like, "Really? You think you can advise me on how to raise my child?" And he's like, "Actually, yes. Like I have a mastery in that."
Yeah,
And
actually, yes.
and I think that that's like really important to remind people, like that they have to respect you regardless of your marital status. And in terms of like children and stuff like that, like I think that, you know, well, first of all, I had no problem making someone feel uncomfortable when they would be like, "Oh, so how many kids do you have?" And I'd be like, "I don't have kids yet." And like, and that's, I'm okay saying that to you, and you can now be uncomfortable like in your corner by yourself.
Yep.
Because again, like, why is that the topic of conversation? Like, I understand it's an easy like meeting point, like, you could talk about the
Hi, how are you?
weather.
Oh, where are you from? Oh, what's your job? Oh, and do you have kids? Like that's like the
Exactly.
next. Yeah.
Exactly. And like I get it, but like have we not yet seen how painful of a question that is for so many people? Like forget about the person who has no children. What about the person who lost a child? Like do they say that they have four or do they have three? Like why are you asking that? And unless I bring it up, I don't think it should be a conversation piece. Like unless like we're looking at my family pictures together, I don't think it has to come up. And I think that that's okay to remind people, like when they ask those inappropriate questions, and even though they're not ill-intentioned, like it's okay to redirect the conversation and teach them. And I think that I know that people tiptoe around me and ask and don't want to ask me like, "Oh, are you having another child? Are you going to have more children?" Like people, and they shouldn't ask me because it's
Of course.
again not their business.
None of their business. Correct.
you know um but there's also like a respectful way to ask somebody how they're doing or to offer your support. And I've actually coached a few people through this because they say, I have a sibling who doesn't have children and I want to be supportive, but she doesn't talk about it. So I think one thing that's important to say to somebody is, "I'm here for you if and when you want to talk." And like
Yep.
that's it. Don't even read into it. Don't even be like, "I know you must be going through something," because you know what? Maybe they're not.
Right.
Like I
Right.
actually just saw a post the other day on one of the groups, a Facebook group, and this girl said, like, "We are not trying to have children yet. Everyone keeps asking me, and I don't want to tell them I'm infertile. I'm not. And it's just like,
Yep.
this is a choice we're making right now because that's best for our lives. And like, okay, say
Yeah.
that if you're comfortable. And I think that that's really important. It's just like, think about how you would want to be spoken to if you had a very personal issue going on, and how you wouldn't want to be spoken to, and then multiply that by like a million, and then talk with that
Correct.
level of sensitivity.
Correct. Correct. I love that. To multiply it by a million. Yes, exactly. One of the things that I learned when I was working at Nechama Comfort was like their line that they always use, and I've now also adopted, is when you're having these conversations where you're standing around at work, cocktail parties, now on Zoom calls or whatever it is, and like everybody's chit-chatting, it's like, "Hey, how are you? Where are you from? What kind of work do you do?" And then it's the inevitable, like, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
so how, do you have kids? How come you don't, like, whatever it is. So their line is, instead of that, say, "Tell me about your family." And so
Yeah,
then it's like, if your family, is two dogs and three cats, then that's your family. If your family is just your husband, that's your family. If you're not married
totally,
yet and your family is your mom and your sister and you're this, like, that's your family. Everybody has a
totally,
family, and you can decide what that family is. And then it doesn't make anybody feel alienated in terms of whether they have children or don't have children, whether they're married or they're not married, what stage of life they're in or not. It just gives people the agency to be able to answer in a way that makes them feel comfortable. And I love that. And I think it's just another way of like, just like flip the question around. You can still sort of get at it. Like everybody knows what you're asking, right? Like we all know that we want to hear a little bit more about your personal life, but it can be done a little bit more sensitively.
Totally. Totally. And you know what? Like I said before, like you want to get to know somebody, you can ask them about their work, you can ask them what they studied in university, what their master's degree is, whatever it is. You don't have to ask them about their children. Like certainly not until you know them better.
Totally, totally. Okay, look, I mean, we've covered a tremendous amount, and I'm so grateful to you for coming on, for being open and honest, and just really laying it out there for everyone and sharing your
Thank you.
story and your pieces and your bits of information. I mean, I, what what would you leave people with here? Like, I mean, you've given us like 1,000 nuggets already, but the people who are watching, like, I know there are people who are single on here. I know there are people who are married. There are all sorts of people are on here. What do you leave them with here?
So there's actually, I'm going to say at least two things. Number one, like trust your gut. Like always trust yourself. Like if you, and this is like even like a medical professional thing. Like I knew at a certain point, like my doctors were not the right doctors for me, and I had to keep pushing to find the right medical team. And if you're, struggling to have children and you're just feeling like, why isn't this doctor working? Maybe it's not possible, like whatever the health issue is, but like just find another opinion, like keep working at it, like, and don't be afraid to tell somebody just because they have a medical degree, I think you're wrong. Like trust your gut, you know yourself best.
Yep.
And then again, I think like the next thing is don't like keep things to yourself, but it doesn't mean you have to like put them on Instagram live, and it doesn't mean that you have to like just blurt it out at shul or whatever it is. Like find, even if it's one person, just don't harbor what you're experiencing by yourself. Like just find that person. And if you're married, it doesn't have to be your spouse. Like that's okay to take that to somebody else who is not as emotionally connected to the challenge that you're experiencing. Actually, that reminds me of my third thing that I wanted to say.
Good.
That I think that I know for myself, like I feel guilty in a way. Like my husband didn't come into this marriage thinking that he would have to, go through surrogacy with me. And I don't think I said this before. Our first journey with IVF, it cost us $150,000. Like that was our first down payment on a house. I don't know, our house in the Hamptons, and it's something that I think about like all the time. Like if my husband had married somebody else, he wouldn't have that experience. Obviously, he doesn't let me think about that. He doesn't make me feel guilty. And he actually even said once, like, actually multiple times, even if your doctor says it's okay, I don't want you to go through pregnancy because I don't want anything to happen to you. I don't want to risk any of your health, your health, which is like such an incredibly supportive thing to say. I'm very lucky, thank God. And so my point is like, if you're in a relationship that is like, it's really hard to be going through this, together, like find a third party to talk to. And if you're single and your parents are breathing down your neck, those are not the people you should be talking to about this. Like I was very lucky. My mom has and continues to be very supportive through this, but there are a lot of people I know that like they can't talk to their parents because as soon as they start talking about dating and things like that, all it is fighting. And like, you know what? That's okay. Like parents they know how to parent us when we're children, but they don't know how to parent their adult child who is single because there's this like, it doesn't line up. Like they weren't prepared for that, even though we're not really prepared for parenting in general. Right. I think it's even a different level that but I got married at 21. Why aren't they getting married at 21? Right. So just like you have to be healthy and safe and comfortable and find those resources that can make you feel that way. Oh no. Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, I people keep trying to call me during this live. I don't know why. They don't know I'm on a live. Just one thing that you said just reminded me what you were saying about how your husband didn't, quote, sign up for this, right? It's so common to hear from people in this community. If one partner has the issue or the other partner has the issue, then it's like, well, they could have married someone else and then they wouldn't have been going through this. And like that sentiment, that guilt is something that lives with people and eats away at people and sometimes eats away at marriages. And so, yes, exactly what you were saying about finding that person or people, whether it's a group of people, meaning that it's a therapist plus its friends, to sort of use those people as your outlet to have a space to put that, so that you can come into your marriage and be there, because at the end of the day, the person chose you. Like, they chose you and you're going through this together. And so I think that it's such an important point to really find those outlets and to make sure that you're feeling supported in whatever the feelings that you're feeling.
Totally, totally. And I think it is also even with siblings, right? And I know my sisters, my sister-in-law, they're on here, and they, Baruch Hashem, are blessed to have children, and they should have many more children if they want to. And I know that they've also been like so sensitive, because they, as they would tell us that they're expecting, you know, they're concerned, how do you feel about this? And I've always been incredibly happy for them. And it happened to have been that my brother and sister-in-law had a baby boy exactly 3 months before our son was born, and we actually didn't even tell our siblings at that point yet that we were like, we told them about 6 weeks, or maybe 8 weeks before our baby was born, and they had asked us if we wanted to kvater, to carry the baby in at his brit milah. And we actually respectfully declined. And it wasn't just because we, thank God, we're expecting a baby, but how many times did I have to publicly announce to the room, yeah, we're the ones that don't have a baby, you know?
Right.
And that's the other thing, is like, you can say no. Like, you don't have to take that honor of being the kvater. You don't have to do that. Like, you own your own story, narrative, situation, whatever it is. And everybody's coming at it from the best place, I hope. And your siblings can be your best allies, but they could also unintentionally, and you guys didn't, but you know, siblings can unintentionally hurt you, and they don't know, because they're not going through the same experience. And you have the right and the responsibility to yourself to tell them, I love you. That means a lot to me, but it actually is going to be hurtful for me to do that.
Incredibly important point. Yes, Shashan is saying that now. Incredibly important point. Yes. Okay. Look, Aliza, thank you. I feel like this is the beginning, because you and I have to have another discussion where we talk more about the surrogacy process, and where you come back and talk more about that, because I know there are lots of people who want to know about that. So that we will schedule. But in the meantime, I know you've said it before, but I'm going to ask it again. If people want to contact you about whatever reason, you are open to that. You are.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Please. I'm not such an Instagram user, so you can find me here. I think I'll find the messages. You can email me, AlizaAbrams@gmail.com. That's also fine. I'm like a very public person, so you can just like Google me and you can find me.
And she's amazing. And she's
Thank
amazing,
you.
as you all have seen.
Thank
you. Thank you. Thank you. And look,
Thank
I know this community thanks you also, because they need the chizuk. They need the support, and you're exactly the right person to give it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for creating this space, Amy. It's really because of you. So thank you so much.
Look, it's we're all trying to do our little part here, right? Like, that's
Totally.
All right. Good night, everybody. I will put up contact information for Aliza, and God willing, this will save. So I will link it, God willing, afterwards when it saves. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.